so shocked. I've been following, hi, John. Thank you,
Hi
by
there.
the way, so much for all of this. And thank you, Corinne, and the whole team. I've actually been following you, John, for about 10 years, and I started the MBSR class back then. And I haven't, I've practiced regularly, but not the way that I did when I was in the class. I would say that I incorporate mindfulness into my day most days, I would say. And then I
Hmm.
have a separate practice that I do ongoing, but not on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And I have a few questions. I'm trying to gather my thoughts on this. And what the last speaker said sort of has to do with it. So I don't want to be redundant.
No
So
worries. It's fine to be redundant.
okay. But I basically I'm in a really tough position right now where a year ago I developed a very serious illness that is potentially life-threatening at any given moment. And it has been very traumatic. And before COVID happened, I was already isolated for about 6 months in my own home, not able to leave
Wow.
because I've been so sick. Um,
I'm so sorry to hear this.
Thank you. This is really hard for me.
Well, take your time. There's no hurry.
Yeah, this is very hard.
Where are you calling from, by the way?
Toronto.
Okay.
Toronto. I had been through a lot of trauma in my life, both physical and mental. And it's funny, somebody brought up the body keeps the score. I think, I don't know. I wonder about the connection between emotional trauma and physical illness. And I don't know if I've just done something wrong.
You haven't done anything wrong, no matter what you've done.
It just, it feels as though I haven't come to the place I thought I would 10 years ago when I started this practice, but rather sort of succumbed to the trauma. And I'm 34 now. I didn't, I wonder, am I going to heal that trauma before I die? And nobody can answer that, but I don't know if mindfulness is the way, and how much of psychology is what I miss. It maybe it's more therapy, that has to be done, and less about the mindfulness, or maybe more mindfulness, and I'm always looking for that answer.
Yeah, so let's stop for a moment, okay? Because you've just demonstrated, so to speak, Kat, that you're being pulled this way and that by your own grasping, okay? By the thoughts that are saying, well, maybe it would be more this or more beneficial on this side or that side. And then all of a sudden it's like you get lost.
Yeah.
And healing is about kind of dropping in and not being caught by any of it, including what happened to you. What happened to you, whatever it was, in terms of trauma, multiple traumas on one side or another, that's only part of what of you. Okay. So just like we all carry scars, okay? But instead of just focusing on the scars and the wounds and the hurt and the trauma, could we focus on that part of you that was never hurt, that was never touched, that is what the scars are held in? And part of your mind will say, well, there is nobody there, that this is me. The trauma defines me, and there's nobody else. I was destroyed or whatever. But that can't possibly be true. I mean, for all sorts of reasons, just encountering you like this, and you're telling me that you're training, in mindfulness, and that you were even tuning into this thing. I wonder if you're just tuning in out of desperation, or if you're also tuning in for some other kind of motivations that you're not recognizing completely, are already healing you and are already beautiful and are already part of your whole, your wholeness. And so again, it's really important not to get too caught up in the narrative, even though when the narrative is one of trauma, disregard, abuse, and horror, it's a nightmare. And it's very hard to actually not completely be sucked in and identify the nightmare. But that's where the lifeline comes in. That's where, like, the breath in this moment, maybe there's no trauma. There's just the past.
Yeah.
But what is in this moment that's not the past? Everything in the form of possibility, if you stop identifying yourself merely with the past. And that's an opening, whether you want to call it a psychological opening, spiritual opening, physical opening. I mean, it's a recognition that you're already whole, even with all the scars, even with all the wounds, even with all the hurt, and even with all the horror of whatever it was. That you're not dead yet. The body's still moving, the breath in and out for you. And you're practicing in ways that seem hopeful, or at least possibly useful to you. And that's a fabulous place to actually take up residence, and then trust that by nurturing that, by exercising the muscle of mindfulness, the muscle of self-compassion, the muscle of heartfulness, the muscle of allowing things to be as they are and not being caught in the story of who they are, which is much smaller than who you really are, then you're well on the way to healing all of those things, and also discovering who you are when you step out of the story of who you are and all the trauma associated with it. Does that make any sense to you as I say these things?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have to say that I'm definitely I've been shaped by the mindfulness practice for sure over the last 10 years, and I have more resilience, I have more self-awareness, I have a lot of things that I feel mindfulness has helped me
Mhm.
to develop, that I am able to have moments where I can be present in that moment, even with everything going on, and have this sense of grounding in myself that I didn't have back then when I started the practice.
Well, that's huge.
It
And
is.
basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that another way to say that you're in this moment, at least, or in many moments, you recognize that you're whole, that you're complete, that you're in some
Yes,
sense like a
yeah,
full
I
human
have had.
being and a worthy human being?
Yeah, I think I struggle with maybe the worthiness piece on, sometimes,
Yeah.
not as much as I used to. Everything you're saying, yes. Yes, absolutely.
Well, look at the
Mindfulness.
smile on your face in that very moment, which I can see, even though you're in Montreal,
Oh,
or you're in
Toronto.
Toronto, sorry. I can see right on your face at that moment, and all other, people on the call can see that something lit up in you, and you revealed that wholeness and a lightness of being that is present, and it's always present. It's not something you have to get. It's intrinsic to who you are. But if you stay stuck in the kind of energy of the past and the narrative, then that part doesn't get to help you grow into future moments by taking care of this one as best you can.
Mhm. you so much, and I really appreciate it. I know that there's lots of other people that have
No, keep
questions.
going. If you know,
I,
we take the time, you know, if because I interrupted you, so you were talking, and I don't want to.
well, most of my questions, I actually wrote them down. I was sort of speaking to that trauma piece, and hoping that other people get something out of this as well, of me being sick and talking about illness because of COVID, and because people right now, as we know, are on ventilators, are in a situation where they've developed the virus. And they are facing their own death, and other people who are facing their own death for other various reasons.
Of course,
And yeah, and I think, like, for me, this is, for the past 6 months, I've had to really think about this because, just before the COVID situation,
right.
I was able to see a doctor who stabilized my weight, but I was actually starving to death. So I very, very lucky that right now I'm maintaining my weight
Yeah.
and stabilized before all of the specialists appointments got canceled, and everything.
What good
So
fortune, actually, because, you
yeah.
know, there are a lot of people who are in the situation that you're describing who don't have that kind of support at the moment that they most need it. Now all of a sudden are like, you know, on their own, so to speak, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. And to them,
So
my heart.
how wonderful that that actually unfolded for you in that way.
Yep,
And,
I'm
you know,
very
and just to say the sadness of trauma doing that to anybody, and it's very, very common, as we know, that you would actually starve yourself because the pain is simply so great that you disappear into nothing, and everything around body and body image and life going forward becomes so distorted that you actually live in a reality that is not conducive to ongoing life.
Well, I had actually, the starvation wasn't my doing. It was, even though I know I spoke about emotional trauma, I actually developed pancreatitis. So it
Oh,
was acute. Yeah, so it was acute
so
pancreatitis turned into
I see.
chronic. Yeah, so that's
So
actually what's caused.
it wasn't anorexia.
No, no, it wasn't actually. However, that's a whole nother thing that people are struggling with. That, my heart again goes out to those people. But I had developed acute pancreatitis a year ago, and it has now become chronic. And about 6 months ago, I had a second attack, which, and I have other health conditions on top of it. But what I meant was, I believe the trauma, emotional trauma, has manifested into this type
Yeah.
of thing, not on its own, but as a component of, in terms of environmental, to create the situation. And now, I have developed exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. So everything that I was eating was not absorbing. And so I was just
My
starving
God.
until I got on digestive enzymes they gave me about 6 months or a few months ago, when just before COVID. So I wasn't able to leave the house. I was becoming very weak. I had lost a lot of weight. I put on a bit more now. Um, but
Well,
yeah, so
thanks for clarifying that. Um, Listen, I think it's so great that you're on the mend,
thank you.
and that the world, you know, sort of brought you to this point that before the everything shut down, that you got what you needed, and now you're at least, you know, stabilized and on your way towards a profound healing. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing all this with us. And I just want to, you know, sign off with you by just wishing you all the best. And to, in some sense, of course, doubt is a big part of, you know, the mindfulness practice too, because doubt's always going to come up. And maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be. Maybe it's not the be all and end all of healing or wisdom or whatever. And those are just thoughts as well. But you know, as they say in the Zen tradition, small doubt, small realization, great doubt, great realization.
Mhm.
So doubt's not a problem. It's just more thinking. And it's always a question of how you're going to be in relationship to it. So I wish you, Kat, I wish you all the best. Thanks. We went on a little bit longer than we usually might, but that just shows you that our ideas about time have nothing to do with what's called for in the present moment.